Thank you for joining Beyond the Workbench, a podcast where Odin Clack and Michael Magnus discuss life, business, and how to help entrepreneurs grow and innovate.
Well, I am excited today to be joined by Matthew Gaddy, who is a longtime friend of mine and also has served as my productivity coach over the years. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback from him, and I'm excited to kind of lean into that a little bit and get him to share some of those things that he shared with me over the years in hopes that it kind of helps others, particularly as we ramp up for 2026. This is a great time as everybody's thinking about their plans and their goals. But the idea of how do I actually execute on them? How do I hold myself accountable? I think that is a struggle for all entrepreneurs, particularly entrepreneurs in a craft space. And so excited to bring him in to talk to you guys. And with that, welcome, Matthew. Thanks for coming to hang out.
Thanks so much, Michael. I appreciate you having me on here. I'm excited to talk to you and your listeners and just have an engaging conversation about something I enjoy nerding out about. So I'm excited.
So in this case, it's productivity, not necessarily leather work. I will say, as we get started, there are probably a lot of the listeners who share some of the same challenges that I have. Maybe that's why they connect with the podcast or with Odin and I. And so I will say that as we get into this, you have my blessing, you have my permission to kind of share some of the things that we've talked about before, what's worked and what hasn't in some of the things that we've done, and even where we've created some systems and maybe they worked or didn't work, and maybe even why. Because I think we all learn from failure more than we do from our successes. So, and you've seen me, through a lot of things, good, bad, and otherwise. And so I kind of open the floodgate a little bit with caution. we have an editor if it gets too intense, but yeah, just I'm open to being somewhat vulnerable about some of the things that we've discussed over time, in case that's helpful to the listeners, because I do think that you've given me some great advice over the years. So I guess for starters, let's just do a little bit of a level set and talk a little bit about your background and how you got into productivity coaching, because that's kind of a unique thing. There's not a lot of those out there. And so talk a little bit about what brought you to see that need. What is the problem that you decided to try to solve by kind of getting into this industry?
So it kind of goes back to when I was in high school. I have to go way back until like the whole life story, but we'll breeze through this. We'll make it as palatable as possible. Growing up, I was homeschooled. And when I got to high school, my mom was my primary teacher, and we got to high school and she said, "Hey, you need to learn these things, and here's the book, and you figure it out." So it really became a challenge for me to learn, how do I absorb this information? How do I take these tests? How do I understand this information? But those skills that I learned helped me when I got to college. When I got to college, it was really interesting to see how some of these scheduling, how some of these, what I didn't know was actually productivity tips were assisting me while I was in school. I was into school for electrical engineering. I got 2 minors while I was there. And so these tools and understanding how to plan my day, how do I study, how do I get the most out of the time that I have, were things that were really innate to me. Well, not innate. I learned them, but I put them into practice without knowing what they were. Progressing to my first job and putting those into practice there and realizing, okay, the things that worked in school don't necessarily always translate directly to the workplace. So once I got to there, my first job, I really had to dive into, how do I get more out of the time that I have? And along that, starting my first job, starting little side businesses on the side. Productivity coaching wasn't the first thing I tried, but what I realized was, in learning how to become more productive and learning how to manage my first job and also another side business I was working, I learned, hey, these productivity things I'm learning are actually things that I've been doing all the time. And I enjoy learning about this. So why don't I just teach this piece of it rather than trying to use this thing that I'm learning to create this other business? So that's kind of how I got into the space, and fast forwarding from there, leaving that full-time job initially in 2020, taking productivity coaching for full-time for about 3 or 4 years, taking a step back, not necessarily a step back, but kind of transitioning and not making it full-time as much when my wife was in school. But those productivity principles and the things that I was teaching others really are helpful in not only my professional life with my business, but also in my personal life. I'm sure that's for most of your listeners and for you too. I have kids. I have to, attempt to go to the gym regularly. I have to cook food, unfortunately. I have to clean my house. I have to be there for my wife. You have all these other competing priorities. So it really becomes a challenge to see, how do I fit the things that matter most to me into my day? Not all the things. And that's, if I could, first productivity tip, don't try and do all the things. What are the most important things that you want to do, and structure your life around those particular things? And if you don't know what those are, take time to figure that out. It is so much more valuable and important for you to realize these 4 things are the things I really care about, and I want to do these as much as I can, rather than trying to do your to-do list of 97 million things. And you may say, well, these 97 million things need to be done. It's like, they do need to be done, but you may not necessarily have to be the one to do them. And of those 97 million, I guarantee you about half of them, if they never got done, nothing would happen. So, first productivity tip, structure your life around the things that mean the most to you, and put those things into your life first. Because it's important for me to spend time with my kids and with my family, and make sure that my house is clean. Normal, simple things like that. The productivity coaching really helps to make sure that the week that you're living and the week that you're going into is structured around the goals that you have set, rather than just showing up to each day and saying, what should I do? When we're in a reactive mode, the thing that's the loudest is the thing that's going to give us the most attention. But that loud thing isn't always the most important thing. It just happens to be the loudest and happens to be the most urgent. And if you're spending your time focusing on what's the most loud and what's the most urgent, you really aren't directing your life. You're responding to the things that are happening. And that's a really easy way to look up at the end of the year or in June or July and realize, how did I get here? I've been busy all this time and I haven't done any of the things that I set out to do. You've been reactive rather than being proactive towards the thing that you want to do. Anyway, long story short, school background, productivity tip, 2 productivity tips, somewhere in there. I enjoy talking about these things. So I have to make sure that I slow down and don't just start spieling and turn this into a productivity sermon. So I'm going to be quiet. I'll let you ask your next question.
So I think that's a really interesting kind of journey, starting as an engineer and seeing the opportunity and really the things that you never learned as an engineer that you thought were invaluable. And what I remember from our early conversations is really a lot of your productivity coaching early on was for other engineers who were kind of getting in the weeds with things that were not super relevant or important for them to have to do. And it's interesting because I do think there's a lot of parallels between engineers and leather workers who are running their own business. And that might be a wild comparison, but there are a lot of the same common struggles between knowing the right thing to focus on and what's kind of interesting versus what needs to be done. And there's a lot of parallels between kind of what you've done in the past and what our audience is really kind of experiencing today. So I guess when you start with somebody for productivity coaching, where do you usually start to even uncover what are the fundamental things that need to happen before they can start getting better practices?
One of the first questions that I ask them are, what are their goals? What are they trying to achieve? Because it doesn't matter what we do from that point on. If our goals are not set and we're not going in the right direction, no matter how successful or how productive or how many things we get done in a day, we're always going to end up in the wrong location. A good analogy is if you are in a sailboat, if your heading isn't right, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. It doesn't matter, because you've gone the wrong direction. And so what we want to do at the very beginning is figure out what those goals are so we can make sure we're headed in the right direction. Once we've done that, it's really about evaluating their schedule to see what time do you have available, and then begin to put the things that will lead to their goals in the time that they have available. One of the biggest productivity traps is we think of productivity as trying to inject as many things as we can into our day. We look at our calendar and say, oh, there's 77 things in my 8-hour workday. I got them all done. I must have been productive. And that's really not the case. It just means that you've gotten 77 things done. It would be
Guilty.
so much It would be so much more productive for you to do one or two things that helps you to lead to the goals that you're trying to achieve than for you to do 77 other things that are just things to do.
When we talk about goals, everybody has a different approach for kind of what works for them, right? And so let's just define a little bit when you're talking about goals with the clients that you work with. How do you define those goals? Are they, more emotional goals of I want to accomplish this idea? Is it more of a traditional SMART goal of doing things in a very measurable way? Kind of walk us through a little bit of how you define a successful goal, because I think that's a really important place to start.
No, that's a really good question. The answer is yes. So, what we as humans, we are emotional. And so what I start with is we can start with a goal smart goal framework. If they're struggling with the smart goal framework, if they don't have a really tangible grasp on that goal, you can kind of fast forward into the future and say at the end of this year, everything's gone perfectly. Everything you wanted to happen happened. What does your day look like? What are you spending your time doing? What have you accomplished? Sometimes it can be easier to think about it in what does that future ideal state of me look like at a point in the future than it is for me to say, I want to have 67 projects done that are this way by this time in this capacity. For some people, that's great. And like, if you do think that way, if you're thinking about doing it a SMART goal, fantastic. For other people, it's about building that sense of where do I want to be and then planning backwards from that. It could even be something as simple as at the end of the year, I want to feel confident. Okay, what would make you feel confident? I want to be able to walk shirtless on the beach and not feel ashamed of myself. Oh, okay. So you want to be fit, right? Okay, well that's great. We can do something with that. But the more clear you are able to be on your goals and what they mean for you, and the more tangible you're able to make them, even when you're starting with that emotional sensation, the better it will be when it comes time to say, all right, how do I fix these particular things inside of my structure, inside of my routine? Because we could take that, I want to feel confident, shirtless thing, and we have to say, all right, now we want to be fit. Now we want to be fit. Let's find a workout program. Let's find a dietary program. Or you could say, I want to have a successful business at the end of the year. Okay, what does the successful business look like? I want to make XYZ amount of money. Okay, cool. That's great. Now, what are the prices for your products right now? Okay. And then we take that and how many products do we need to sell to make this amount of money? Is this something you want to have as a lump sum? Is this something you want to do per month? It's great to start there, but we also want to make sure that we're trying to make it tangible. What things need to happen for you to feel this particular way? Once we figure out what things need to happen for you to feel this particular way, we can then say, all right, these tasks that need to be accomplished, let's break these down, let's parse these out, and let's say, okay, in May, you need to be by at this particular stage. All right, so in May, you need to be in this particular stage. In January, February, March, April, May, you need to have these monthly accomplishments. Great. So at the end of the month, you need to be here. That means in week 2, you need to be here. And you just kind of break it down that way. What I like to do is really have a systematic viewpoint of my client's productivity so that when they look at their calendar, when they look at their schedule, there's as little guessing as possible. One thing that I've learned, even in myself and some people that I've worked with, is I don't want to guess. I want to look down. I want to say, all right, this is what I need to do. What time do I need to be there? Cool. What do I need to do? This thing. I can do that. I can do that real well. So the more that we're able to remove that guessing, the more we're able to put you in the place that you need to be in order to reach the goals that you have to achieve, the easier and more repeatable and more systematic that productivity comes. And you're able to see how the things you're doing right now contribute to the goals that you want to do in the future. It's not just some ethereal thing we're doing. It's saying this particular action is going to lead me to this particular destination. And you can follow that trace throughout the year. You can adjust accordingly, of course. But you want to make sure that essentially that's what productivity is. Is the thing that I'm doing right now help me to get to my desired location? If the answer is yes, it's a productive action. If it's not, it's cool. It's real cool. It's great. It's fantastic. I'm so glad you accomplished it. But is that going to help you get to this particular location that you said was important to you? And that's where some of the sticking points can come in. And that's where some of the controversy can come in. But that's where I come in and say, hey, this is where, if this was important to you, follow the plan. If we need to adjust the plan, fine, no big deal. I would much rather you accomplish one or two things each and every day, even if it takes all of your day that leads to your desired goal, than for you to do 177 different things that's just stuff. Quality will always trump quantity, especially in productivity, especially in goal setting, especially in accomplishing your goals.
So, for those who are listening who aren't familiar with SMART goals, I just want to define that. I think it's a fairly common term, but not everybody's come across it. When we talk about goal setting, that typically refers to specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And so it's something that's used a lot, particularly in marketing courses and business courses, to make sure that what you're doing is measurable and has a deadline and is relevant to ultimately what you're trying to accomplish. But I think an important piece of that is making sure that it's relevant to what you're trying to accomplish. You have to know why you have a goal before you can really set one. And so I do think that's another thing for people to kind of think about is it's one thing to say, I want to make an extra $20,000 a year, right? That's great. I want to, let's say that I have a full-time job and that's my goal as a part-time leather worker is that I want to make $20,000 a year. There's not a why in that statement. And so it's really easy to lose focus of why that's the vision. And so, when I have similar conversations, I'll kind of take that step further too. And I know we've had this conversation as well to say, well, what would you do with $20,000? How does that change your life? And for some people, that's, I'm living off Social Security and an extra $20,000 a year would let me take my kids or my grandkids on a vacation every year. Okay, well, that kind of gives you more of an inspirational idea of why you're doing the work. $20,000 is an arbitrary number. $100,000, $1,000,000, really. At the end of the day, money is a tool to accomplish whatever that goal is. And so I think it's important as part of that vision, as part of that goal setting process, to make sure that with those measurable goals, they're measuring progress towards what?
Most definitely. I think you made a really good distinction because you can get lost in the doing and forget the why you're doing. My calendar right in front of me, and there's, a kabillion things on it. And if I just look at it and just look at it for what it is, it's just stuff. But at the very beginning of my calendar, I have these are the goals I'm trying to achieve. And so even having that reminder and writing it out and putting it somewhere where you can see it every day so that when you are doing your leather working, it's not just, oh, I'm going to butcher this and please don't flame me. If I'm making this coin purse or while I'm making this wallet or while I'm making this keychain, it can be really easy to get lost in, I'm just making this thing. But when you have that reminder to say, I'm not just making this thing, I am securing financial security for my family. I am progressing towards Disneyland. I'm getting an oil change for my car. You know, real tangible type of things. It stops being just that particular activity and it becomes larger than that without anything else changing. And it allows you to have a lot more presence and a lot more focus on the action that you're taking and allows you to stick with it a little bit longer. It's not just, oh, I'll finish this later. It's, I'm going to push through this because there's something that this is helping me do the thing that I want to do. And this thing that I want to do is important to me. And that perspective really helps when you are, frankly, sometimes doing things you don't want to do. I would much rather watch SpongeBob with my children sometimes than study for this test I'm studying for. But I know that this test I'm studying for is going to be something that sets up my family for the future. And so bring that particular mindset to the thing that you're working on. It becomes bigger than just, I'm sitting down and doing this particular widget. It's, I'm moving towards this ideal future that I'm creating. And I'm taking the steps right now to make sure that it may not happen in, the specific day that I've anticipated, but at the end of this day, I'm going to be way closer than I was when I woke up this morning. And when you accomplish that over and over, when that begins to compound and begins to become a habit, you'll be surprised how far you can get if you just keep doing that particular work. If you keep showing up, if you keep staying motivated, there'll be days where, hey, I need to take a break. That's fine. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Because if you don't keep going, We always like to say, like, if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. And that's very true because of entropy and things just devolving into chaos, which is why you have to clean your house all the time. There's no, but we haven't done anything. Why is my house dirty again? Entropy. Things just grade. They just degrade. So if you're not working towards it, you're moving further away from it because time has passed. You now have less
Mhm.
time to accomplish that particular goal. So if you need to take a break, rest, rejuvenate, then continue going, keep going.
Well, I think an important piece with that too, and this is just from my own experience, and even in this last week or two, right? Again, I come from the perspective of somebody who has a handful of projects and limited time to be able to do them. So I have 30 minutes here, an hour there, and I'm trying to see what emails I can get done. And you're right, it's not always the most important things. It's the what can I do in this short amount of time? But what's happened over the holiday break for me is that my schedule has slowed down a little bit. And I've fortunately gotten to spend some time with my family. But also with that, I've been able to spend dedicated 4 hours at a time on a project. And I've made infinitely more progress on these big projects as building a new website. I've made so much more progress in these 4 hour time blocks than I could have in 20, 30 minute time blocks, right? The time is there that I would have felt like I would have actually been putting more time to it. But having that dedicated time has really been huge for me to be able to make meaningful progress on those things. So I think it's when we talk about taking a break, sometimes it's taking a break even from the little things that seem routine and maintenance to be able to dedicate to these bigger things.
When you say these things, the voice in my head is like, yeah, but like, what if I don't have that particular time to do the 4 hours on one particular task? And it's really not about if you don't have 4 hours to do it, you won't be able to make progress on it. It's about using what time you have wisely. Whatever time you have and whatever time you can devote, that's what time you have. And that's what you have to devote. I would rather someone spend 30 minutes fully focused on one particular thing than to spend 2 hours on it and I'm on my phone, I'm watching YouTube, I'm trying to watch TV, trying to do all these things at the same time. So it really is about how are you using that time? What presence are you bringing to that time? Are you fully focused during that particular time? So when you're sitting down to do your projects, you may not be blessed with the same amount of time to sit down and do something for 2 hours. But can you do that 30 minutes intensely focused? Those are the types of things that make a difference over time. And those are the types of things that continue to compound. If you're sitting at home and you heard Magnus say, you're like, well, dang it. I don't have 4 hours. Use what you have wisely. This is one of the most, your parents tell you things and then you don't understand them until you become an adult. So this thing my mom used to tell me was Bible thing. Moses goes to the burning bush and God tells Moses, hey, we're going to go let my people free. And Moses says, I can't talk good. I can't do all these things. And God looks at Moses and says, what do you have in your hand? And my mother always interpreted as whatever you have, that's what you need to use. You don't need to go get everything else. Start with what you have right now. So if you have 30 minutes, use your 30 minutes. If you have an hour, use your hour. Use what you have and then begin to reevaluate your schedule. So don't try and get rid of everything else first. Don't try and say, well, I'm not going to do all these things. Da, 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 da. Find out where you're using time less than optimally. Start there. When you get to that time, do it to the best of your ability and use what you have. Use what you have in your hand first, and then let's build on and magnify and optimize that time.
So no, I think that's a great story and a good analogy and something for a lot of us to think about. The thing that I was going to say is that I actually have an app that we've started using in our family that others may find helpful. It's
Oh,
called
yeah.
Focus Friend. And it's a silly little game. It's a gamification of focus, but you have a little bean and he's in a room. And when you set a timer that I'm going to focus for 30 minutes or an hour or an hour and a half. And over that time, he is knitting socks. And then and you earn these socks and then you can purchase decorations for the room. And this sounds so silly, but when you go back to that app to say, okay, I need to interrupt myself because I need to go check something on Facebook, it has this very guilt-ridden, sad character that's like, do you really want to interrupt my progress? And you're like, no, no, I don't. And so we've used it as a family really more for like when we're watching a movie together, we will all let our little bean guy knit socks so that we're present and in that moment together and sharing that. And then but I can see where something like that could be helpful. I've never even thought about using it for work stuff, although I don't know why I wouldn't. That's probably why it's made. But those types of tools, though, they seem like silly little apps, but really they're tools for focus and, in this case, productivity. So it's called Focus Friend. This is not a paid endorsement by any means. This is just a something that our family does that we've found to be helpful and successful. Now, something I want to touch on earlier, you said as you build out your goals and you kind of reverse engineer them to say, at the end of the year, this is what I'm trying to do. So let's break it down by month. Let's break it down by week. What's going to get me there? And I think that for myself, I will call myself out on this, and it won't be a surprise to you because you've known me for a very long time. It only takes one or two missed deadlines for me to say, well, it's ruined for the year. And so I no longer am going to do any of it because at this point I'm behind. And so that is something that I struggle with those types of frameworks. And so, what are some of the things that you work with other people, work with me when we go through that to say, I have this map, I have these series of goals, I missed a mark. How do you adjust for that to make sure that it just doesn't entirely derail your plan?
No, that's a great question. I think the first thing we want to do is figure out why that deadline was missed. Was it a holiday? Was it something that happened? Did you forget it? The reason why we want to do that is because we don't want to let one unaddressed, and we'll use the word issue, trickle over into other areas because you want to make sure that you're shoring up your practices as much as possible so that a I'm gonna use the word failure. This is a very harsh word. I'm sorry, but you don't want this particular conundrum that you had in one area translate to another area. And then it begins to cascade because we never plugged that hole in the ship. We just said, "Oh, well, we'll get you a new ship." Same problem still exists. So we want to figure out what's going on, what happened, how do we solve that particular issue that led to that deadline being missed. And then once we've addressed it, you want to reevaluate your plan and say, "Hey, if I wanted to be here on December 31st, and this is important to me, if I'm there on January 31st instead of December 31st, is that okay? Is that going to really bother me?" We can have such stringent goals and such it's a good thing to have high standards for ourselves, but we also need to understand that we're flexible. We need to be flexible. There's things that are within your life. There's things that are going to happen around you that you have no control over. Water heater goes out, electricity doesn't work, child has to go to the doctor, you break your foot, car doesn't start, things that are just out of our control. And so, as we're pursuing your goals, as you are moving towards that ideal version that you've set for yourself, maintain flexibility. It may say, hey, this deliverable, instead of being ready in May, it's going to be ready in June. It is all a matter of addressing those things as soon as possible. Because the issue you normally happens is and I've seen this happen. This has happened to me before. The issue happened in February, and it was going to affect something in July, and I let people know in June. Don't do that. Let people know at the very beginning, hey, I'm going to be XYZ late. Instead of doing 150, can I do 125? I'm letting y'all know that now. So getting ahead of those particular problems, staying flexible, shoring up those issues, and then also moving that time frame back if necessary, especially for entrepreneurs. A lot of times you are the one making your own schedule. Allow your schedule to work with you so you don't have to fight it all the time. You won't win a fight against a piece of paper because ultimately you're the one that put the stuff on there. And so you're fighting yourself. Fight yourself. Just say, hey, this is no longer realistic. This is no longer something I'm able to accomplish and maintain my sanity and being a good person to my wife and children and the world at large. Instead of getting it done on this day, let's move it back 2 weeks so that we can sleep, we can eat, not be grumpy and angry. And those are the types of things that I like to make sure that people I work with know. It's not about beating yourself up because you failed. It's about figuring out why you failed and then readjusting and continuing forward. You want to keep moving forward.
Something I'm going to try this year. So a few episodes back, I actually shared with people that I was creating MentorBot. Matthew has been a part of brainstorming MentorBot a little bit here and there. And when you're looking at AI, I built this AI bot that AI is really good at finding patterns. And so when I said these are my points of failure historically based on past trends, one of the things that it recommended was prioritize your goals. So it's great to have all of these different goals, but prioritize them and know that if number one starts to fail at any point, you need to stop every other goal because that is the most critical thing. And so for me, going into 2026, I really want to prioritize my health. I've worked a lot. I have, put a lot of time into my kids, into my marriage, into these different things. And the last thing on that list is always taking care of myself. And that's going to come to a head sooner than later. And so I've set some goals of, trying to work out bi-weekly and trying to track my food and few things that are kind of week to week that I can go back and say, did I do this the way that I intended to do this? Then I also have other projects that I'm going through and saying, I want to dedicate this much time to this, right? It's not even about what I want to get done. I want to make sure that I'm giving this 4 hours a month because I can't guarantee what I can get done in that 4 hours, but I know that if I'm giving it 4 hours, then I can be successful over time, particularly because I have a full-time job and I'm kind of doing things on the side between the kids' karate lessons and everything else. And so the thing that I've looked at in the way that I'm structuring this is that there is kind of a hierarchy to the goals. Not all goals are created equal, not all have the same level of priority. If everything's important, nothing is important. And finding whatever that North Star is, and in this case, my health, and saying, here's the fail safes. If I go 3 weeks without working out, I stop all other goals because I've obviously not made time for the twice a week workouts that I think are going to be important, that I decided at the beginning of the year were really critical to me. And so if I'm not making time for that, I need to stop the things that are preventing me from being able to do it. And sometimes I don't think working out sounds like fun, right? But, sometimes just getting in the habit of going and even sitting on the gym equipment and stretching or whatever, right? Just kind of building that muscle memory is what helps create the momentum. And so I think that that's kind of if that's helpful for anybody, that's one of my things that I'm going to try to do this year is rather than just have this list of all the things I could get done, I have them in categories. And then I'm trying to prioritize those categories and know that it's just not all going to get done, right? Like it's impossible for everything to get done. I'll get done when I can. I'll manage expectations with myself. I think that's really important for all of us. But then really being able to know that if the most important things aren't getting done, none of the rest of the things even matter. So
Warren Buffett has a quote practice. So what he did was he wrote down a list of 30, well, I don't remember if it was him or if he gave this assignment to one of his juniors. He had them write a list of 30 things they wanted to be accomplished, and then he had them prioritize them from most important to least important. And he took that list and he crossed out the bottom 25. And he said, you need to focus on the top five and you need to run as hard as you can away from the bottom 25. Because the greatest enemy of great is not bad. The greatest enemy of great is good. Do I want to do this great thing when I could do 8 different good things? That's more difficult to say no to than just saying, oh, I'm going to do this completely antagonistic activity. Antagonistic activities are easy to identify and easy to say, no, I'm not going to do that. It's hey, I'm supposed to go to the gym, but there's this networking meeting that could help me grow my business that's at the same time during my gym time. Well, they're both opportunities, but one is great and one is good. And those are the times when the rubber meets the road. And those are the times when the difficult decisions have to be made. And those are the times where you really have to prioritize what am I actually trying to accomplish this year? Steve Jobs has a quote that says, innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. And so as you can kind of apply that. You can mold that quote and say accomplishing your goals is saying no to 1,000 things. You're going to say no to a lot of really cool things on the way to the thing that you really want to do. And you can look at it in one of two ways. You can look at it and say, oh, I missed out on all these other cool things and I had to say no to everybody and I had to do all these things. Or you can look at it and say, I made space to do the things that are really important to me. And I now have the time to do them. And it's a lot more productive to look at it the latter way. I would encourage all of your listeners to really take time to get clear on their goals, realize, hey, all of these may not get done, but if you could only, the way that I told this to clients is, if you could only get one of these done, which would you do? You can only get one. That's your number one goal. And you look at the rest of your list. If you can only get one of these done, what would you do? Two, and then you can ask yourself 3 to 5 more times. And those are your 3 to 5 for the year. And be okay with that. Be okay with that because you will get so much more out of life. You'll be so much more accomplished and you'll progress to your goals so much faster if you devote the majority of your time to 5 things rather than 30. 30 is going wide but thin. You don't want to go wide but thin. You want to go narrow but really deep into them because that's when you're able to make the most progress in the things you're working on.
You touched on something there that is important, and it is kind of knowing where you need to say no to some things. And it's a balance for sure, right? There's a quote by Dave Ramsey as part of Financial Peace University. Lots of people have been through it that says you have to live like no one else so that you can live like no one else. Right. And in the context of this, he's saying you may be eating rice and beans for a year. Well, if you pay off all your debt because you ate beans and rice for the year, now you can go and have that vacation you've always wanted. Right. Or whatever that looks like. And so, but the challenge is that's a great concept. It's a great idea. I don't want to be miserable for a whole year. Right. And so I think that's kind of the balance that some of us have to play a little bit is that quality of life with still being able to achieve goals. Because it's really easy to say, find your passion, put your nose to the grindstone, and just go in that one direction until you get to your destination. But my kids are doing a recital. I want to buy them flowers or I want to go out to dinner, right? Those are unnecessary expenses. But at the same time, they are things that I think are important for kind of our family. And when it comes to time, which that's really what a lot of this is about is time. It's hard to say, I'm not going to do, I'm not going to watch SpongeBob because I need to take this, I need to study for this law exam, right? But sometimes you have to make that call. But I guess the question that I have is, how do you talk people through that balance, right? Because it's easy to say, give up everything and focus on your dreams. But in reality, you still have to live life. You still have people that you're accountable to. I can say all day long that I really want to do XYZ thing. But if I'm neglecting my wife as part of that, I'm going to have other issues in my life that maybe they weren't. Maybe my goals have to change real quick because I've been neglecting the things that are important, right? And so, how do you advise people to find that balance and really, I know I keep saying this phrase, but manage expectations with themselves about what they can accomplish while still making sure they're not sacrificing their quality of life, their relationships, or is there value in doing that for a short term?
To answer your question, I used to hate when my dad gave me this answer. It depends.
Well, you're studying to be a lawyer, so you got to get real comfortable with it.
I know. I do. But I still like it. There are certain times and certain seasons in your life where it is, hey, we are going to go Spartan bare bones mode on XYZ. The issue is when that time is undefined in either duration or what you are trying to accomplish. If you say, hey, we're going to eat, you come to your family and say, we're paying off debt, we're going to eat beans and rice every day. Your family might be cool. They might say, hey, we're down. How long? And you say, until you've lost everyone. Or if they say, why? What are we doing this for? And you say, because you've lost everyone. So you can get a lot more buy-in, especially with family, and especially with people that you're working with when they understand the parameters of what you're doing. It allows them to have buy-in and also allows them to set expectations. It is one thing to tell your wife, hey, for the next 6 months, I'm working on this particular project. It's very important. This is why I'm doing it. At the end of the 6 months, it'll be done. But like, I need to focus on this particular thing. And if you don't see me, that's what I'm doing. I'm not out here wilding. I'm focused on this particular thing. That gets a lot more buy-in and that allows a discussion to open up versus you just trying to disappear for 6 months. Because in the first scenario, your wife can say, okay, I understand that, but can you organize your schedule so that we spend Saturdays together? Can you make sure that you're at home and you're at least eating dinner with us? Can you take the kids to school? And all those same things can happen. But now that we've negotiated, we're able to set parameters around that particular point in time so that it's sustainable, not only for you, but for the people around you. There's also times in your life where you may not be able to go all the way into the goals that you have achieved. My wife just got out of school. She graduated in summer of last year. While she was in school, the amount of things I was able to get done was very, very minimal because I was doing all the things. She was in school, she was in clinicals, and she was working. So she was in school and I just let her do school. She was in the focus mode and I was in the managing everything else mode. There are times when that is essential. And sometimes when you're in that time where, hey, I'm managing a lot of things, the most important thing I could do was rest and just being okay with that. And that was a whole internal issue that I had. I'll let people in on this part of it because if you're like me, this was an issue. Well, I want to do something. If I don't take a nap or if I stay up late, I can do this thing and I can have it done. Not knowing that, hey, it's 11:30 right now. You have to wake up at 4:30 tomorrow to get these people to where they need to go to. You can't run on 6 hours of sleep for an extended period of time and stay sane. Once again, those personal goals and placing them in the larger context of the family. And there's also times where you're going to have to talk to the larger context of the family to say, hey, I have to focus on this particular activity. How can I make this palatable for you all? How can I make sure that when I'm spending 7 hours a day working on XYZ project, that you guys still love me when I come back and all of you will still be here? And that goes into communication and having those sometimes uncomfortable conversations, but it also gives you that opportunity to share that vision, to say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is how it benefits me. This is how it benefits you. This is how it benefits the family. I'm not just doing this because I enjoy doing this particular thing. I am trying to, like we talked about before, trying to take y'all to Disneyland. There was a story that I read. It was a salesman. He told his family, I want to hit my sales goals this particular quarter so that I can get the bonus. We can take you to Disneyland. His kids would follow him around and say, why are you not working, Daddy? You need to go make some calls. You need to go talk to people. It's like, why? Because we want to go to Disneyland. And when you can have that level of buy-in and when you can have that level of understanding with all the members of your family, it now becomes we're all invested in that particular activity. You get opportunities where your spouse or your children or walk in and say, hey, this thing you're trying to do, XYZ is doing that too. You should talk to him about it. This thing you were doing, I was talking to such and such. When he says you're done, bring it to him. He wants to buy it. Or, hey, this particular thing we're working on is beneficial to all of us. Let's all help dad do it, or let's all help mom do it. And so when you're able to have those conversations, it really helps to once again get that buy-in. It helps you to stay sane during the process and then make sure that when you come out of that intense time, everyone is still there. You're not being served papers. If it's not clear, I like to look at productivity more holistically. It's really easy to get into the really nitty gritty. Oh, you need to be optimized. You need to have 17 minutes of naps here. And you need to wake up at this time. And this is the minimum amount of sleep. I've done that before. It's not fun because a lot of times it's more stressful keeping that system in place than it is putting it together and working it. We are irrational humans. We do things every day that don't make any sense. And so what I want to do, especially for you all, is to build a system that has pillars of productivity with flex in between so that your days are not so rigid that when something goes wrong, your whole day breaks. If you look at your calendar and it's scheduled back to back to back to back to back from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., something's gone wrong. Because if you miss one thing or you go late 5 minutes on something, the rest of your day is, ruined. And then with those gaps that are within your schedule, allow them to flex, allow them to breathe. That's when you handle those emails. That's when you handle those fires that pop up. You don't want to organize your schedule in such a way that the minute is encapsulating all the space that the important could inhabit. That's what you don't want to happen.
Yeah, this conversation reminds me a little bit of a throwback to our second episode with a guy named Dave Munson who started Saddleback Leather Company, and he said that part of his thing was that when he started that company, his wife had to quit a job that she loved to go on this journey with him, and so such a critical part of that was how he sold it to her. Like, this is the idea. Here's the vision. Here's what I'm trying to do. If we do it, here's what we have the opportunity to accomplish. And here's what our life looks like, once we accomplish that. And that's a totally different thing than like, hey, I'm going to disappear for the next 6 months to paint that vision, to say, this is what life looks like if I'm able to do this for the next 6 months. And it may be, a trade off too, like with you and your wife. She was the one who was in school and working, and you did all the things for the house, for the kids, for everything. And now you're in law school. And I'm sure that was probably part of the conversation was, I will go all in. I will take, I will support you in you going and chasing this thing with the understanding and the agreement that I'm next. I also have this dream. I also want to do this thing. And so, knowing you and knowing Ashley, it was probably not, oh, you're done. Now, what am I going to do? Now I got more time. It was probably, you know, now that you're finished, now it's my turn. Right. And so, being able to navigate that and kind of negotiate that ahead of time, I think is also important. So, everybody recognizes that their goals are important too. Because I think that's one of the things that I will admit I probably don't do a very good job with is recognizing the goals of my wife. And she's built a little bit differently. She doesn't have, goals in the same way that I have goals, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have things that she cares about. And so sometimes I'm sure I say, well, I'm going to build this thing so that I can try to accomplish this for our family and it's going to be great. But I probably need to do a better job to kind of say, hey, if I spend my time this way, how would you like me to spend time after that? Because for her, her goal may be for us to spend more time together as a family. And that is also an important goal for me to acknowledge and recognize that if she agrees that this is what's best for us collectively, for me to spend my time this way, that there is a light at that end of the tunnel, right? Kind of to your point of the beans and rice intel, right? I think you kind of have to frame it a little bit. So this is interesting. This is giving me lots of ideas, even for myself. I always enjoy our conversations.
No problem. I do too. I am not a certified marriage counselor. Anything that I say is just some dude talking on a computer screen. Communication in a relationship is so important
Yeah,
because this is the way that I like to think about it. Imagine how complex you are. You don't know why you do all the things that you do, and you live with you. Now, there's another one of those that you are in a relationship with, and y'all have to do life together. Talk through things. If I could get one thing across to especially people that are full-time entrepreneurs, it would be allowing your spouse to be aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. They may be the person that says, "I don't care. I still want to tell you." I still want you to at least be aware of this process. When we have black box productivity where you go into the workroom and stuff happens and then you come back out, it removes the sense of almost buy-in or understanding of what you're doing. You just go in there, you sit in there for 8 hours and you come out. It's like, no, I do important things in there. but you don't know because it's the black box. And even in life in general, when you're setting those goals as a family and you are determining what your 2026 looks like or what your life looks like in the future, having that communication to understand these are the important things to me. What are some of the important things for you? Because it would be a travesty for you to accomplish all the things that you have for your family and you look around and you're happy and everyone else is miserable because we didn't want this. We didn't want this at all. Like, but I worked on this all year. We didn't want it.
And I think this is even more critical because in the leather industry, there are a lot of husband and wife teams.
Mhm.
And so I think, it's important for my wife and I as just a couple. But when you really dig down into it and you have like Odin and his wife, they are
Mhm.
partners in that business. We've talked to a
Mhm.
number of people on the show that the spouses are partners in that business. And that is a different dynamic for sure. And so I think these things that you're saying about kind of black box productivity time is probably even more critically important for those that are working with a spouse or have a business partner, right? It doesn't have to be a spouse, but you have somebody else who is working with you, or maybe you've hired somebody and they're doing all of your hand sewing now. Well, the way that they're going to have that commitment to you and your business is because they understand why what they're doing, which maybe they don't love or maybe they don't understand, why it's part of the bigger picture. Having that communication to say, what you're doing is so important because if that step doesn't happen, I can't do these three other things that I'm working on while you're doing that. Because I think even with employees, it can be easy for somebody to feel like they're doing work and they don't know what you're doing. And to some degree, you're the owner, you're the boss, you're not entirely accountable to them in that way. But I do think that the way that you're going to have happier employees, happier workers, better productivity, people who stay and work for you longer are the people who are included in the conversation. They understand what's going on and they understand like their role in it. So is there anything that you would add on to this conversation with that idea of taking these insights from a relationship, in this case, a marriage, to couples working together or somebody working with an employee? How does that change the dynamic?
I think it's along the similar lines as the contexts are different. When you're working with a business partner, regardless of who that partner is, if you are a leader, you need to be able to share that vision of what we're trying to do. And it doesn't have to be a dictatorial vision. It can say, this is what I'm thinking, because different perspectives are going to see things differently. And so, as you're sharing your vision about where you want the company to go, someone could say, hey, that's fantastic. Instead of doing, I don't know, print marketing, you want to open our door to social media marketing. Same goal, different avenues. And so, the more that you're able to propose that vision, the more feedback you're able to get from it, the more you're able to attain buy in from the people that you're asking. And that buy in is what's going to transition that employee from saying, why am I stitching these? I'm only stitching these things to, oh, I'm making products that help us do yada, 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 yada. Because larger business context, I feel like there's nothing worse for a business than your employees just doing stuff and they don't know why they're doing it. If they're just doing things and I just come in here and I press buttons, I don't know what these buttons do. I don't know where this is going. I'm not even sure if my work matters. And that's the
Yeah.
scary part. Because when someone doesn't think their work matters, why does it matter if I do it well? Why would I waste my time doing something well if you're never going to check it? Anyway, back into the conversation. When you're able to show that vision, it stops being just that widget that you're accomplishing and it starts being a part of a larger plan. And when they have the buy in and they are able to say that, hey, Michael shared this vision with me, I offered some feedback, he took it. And now we're working on this particular thing. I'm working towards that particular goal. I have buy in and I have buy in that I helped create. We're doing a part of my plan too in doing this. And that encourages people to stick with the company longer because you want to see your idea come to life. It encourages them to do things well because I'm an integral part of the thing that we're doing. And so when you're looking inside of a business context, being able to offer that vision, being able to offer that buy-in, and also being able to integrate other people's feedback really helps the people you work with, whether they're employees or a business partner, say, we're not just doing stuff. We're not just doing things. We are progressing towards a goal. And like we were talking about earlier in our conversation, it stops just being 45 or 3 or 4 different things on your schedule. It's, I want to be able to walk confidently. What does that look like? Gym time. It's not just gym time. It's not just me going there. It's not just me doing these things. It's, hey, I'm becoming more confident in this. And it makes that particular action, no matter how small it is, much larger in significance. And the larger the significance that you have, the more attention you're going to place on it. The more attention you place on it, the better you'll be able to perform it.
I think you've given us a lot to think about, and I'm actually looking forward to going back and re-listening to this conversation because there's a lot of notes that I need to make and things that I need to be reminded of. So there's a lot of good gems of wisdom in here. I think as we start to wrap up, something I think would be interesting, and you are uniquely qualified to do this, is share based on the years that we've done work together, right? Off and on in different capacities. What are the 3 pieces of advice that you think I need to hear the most, even if you've told it to me before and it didn't stick? And I'll give context why I asked this question. Yeah. Let me give context why I asked this question. Going back to the beginning of this conversation, I do think that there's people that struggle in similar ways. I think that there are a lot of consistencies in the way that a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are making things by hand and running a whole business around it, I think there are some common struggles. So if there's advice that you have for me, it might be very uniquely specific to me, but chances are I think whatever those biggest opportunities are that you identify for me are probably valuable lessons for other people as well.
Say no to good opportunities to make space for great opportunities. Second one would be okay with white space in the calendar and protect it as white space, empty space. The last one would be take care of yourself because you have to do everything that you do. You do everything you do. But if you're not taking care of yourself, everything you do is not your best. So those would be my 3.
Those are good. Those are good reminders. Is there anything else that you find as common advice that you give to other people that aren't me? that
When you are goal setting, set aside time to goal set. The reason why I say that is you'll have 1 or 2 that come to your head. We're like, oh, I'd like to do this. But you have to sit with it for a little bit to really discover what would really be meaningful for me and also what that looks like. Do you really want to make $2,000 a month? Or do you want to be able to live somewhere warm? It's not about having a larger house. It's about you don't like where you live. Let's move somewhere else. Really think about those types of things. Something you brought up a lot was taking care of yourself. You want to make sure that outside of the conversation, you have to be very intentional about the things you put in your body. And a lot of those things are food. You have to make sure that you're fueling your body well, you're getting enough rest, you're drinking enough water, you're avoiding all those things, all the things that you know you should do, just do those things. 90% of us know how to be healthy. We need to exercise, we need to eat good, we need to drink water, stay away from soda. If you do those 4 things, your life will change. And it seems simple and it seems trivial, but it makes a really big difference in your life and how much energy that you're able to bring when you're working on a particular thing. And get sleep. That's a part of those 4 to 5. The last one would be it's going to be a challenge and it's going to feel like you're having to fight seemingly the same battles in different arenas. One of the biggest challenges that I faced and I saw in other people's lives is that you'll see a particular issue that you have, but you'll see it in this particular area of your life. And you'll be like, oh, okay, cool. I'll solve it over here. And then you'll start saying, like, I'm having an issue over here. What is this thing? And it's the same issue. It's just now over here. And it can be very discouraging because you say, oh, I solved this issue in domain A, but now I'm seeing the same issue in domain B. And the issue is not what domain it's in. The issue is the issue. Dealing with that particular issue is going to be difficult. It can be challenging, But if you don't deal with it, it's going to continue to show itself up in other different areas. A way to think about it is you've spent however many years you've been alive building this particular habit. You can make significant progress in 90 days. It may not be solved in 90 days, but it's not about getting it done in 90 days. It's about when you see it, can you correct it? Can you continue correcting ad infinitum? And that's what it has to be sometimes. You have to continue to correct it, and eventually it'll become the new habit will replace the old habit. But it may not just be a switch moment. It may be something you continually have to focus on. So as you are progressing, as you are achieving your goals, if you see those nagging things that show up, whether you have commitment issues or whether you have compulsions or any other type of habit or hang up that you're experiencing, continue to correct it, continue to work towards solving it. Be willing to commit to doing that until it's fixed. Don't set a 90-day timer because you might be disappointed at the end of the 90 days. It may be something you have to work on for a year. It may be something you have to work on for the rest of your life. But guess what? If you don't, it's just going to stick with you. You may not accomplish your goal in the time constraints that you have initially set out to do. But even if you progress towards it, you'll be so much closer at the end of that domain, wherever that may be at the end of the year, than you would be if you just sat and did nothing. I would much rather have someone progress towards the goal and fail at the end of the year than say on January 1st, I'm not even going to do it. It's like, why? Because I'm going to fail. Progress and fail and learn and correct and try again.
That reminds me a little bit of a quote that I really like, and it doesn't immediately apply, but I'll kind of bring it full circle. The quote is, sometimes when you're so busy putting out fires, you never realize there's an arsonist. And so I think that is often meant in a business context if you're just doing activities, but you're never really looking for the source of that problem. But I think it really applies here as well, that if I'm always having these unsuccessful activities because I never really addressed what the problem is, I'm never going to make any progress on it. I'm just going to keep putting out fires. And it'll feel slightly rewarding because I put that fire out, but I'm never going to make progress or be productive in kind of what I'm doing there. I'm just being responsive. I'm being reactive. So that's good things to think about there.
Take the time to do it. It's not fun, but it is very, very valuable.
So as we come to a wrap, any closing thoughts, anything that you'd like people to know, or just kind of putting a button on it as we start to wrap up?
I may never meet any of you, but know that I am in your corner, and I want you all to set goals for 2026. And I want you to break those goals down and progress towards them each and every day. You may fail at them. It may be more difficult. It may be challenging, but I encourage you and I implore you to continue to try. It's better for you to try and fail than to not try at all. So as you are going into 2026 and as you are setting goals for what you want to accomplish this particular year, commit to them. If it has to be half of what you initially thought, continue to commit to them. Be realistic with yourself. Be kind with yourself. Make sure you get enough sleep. Make sure you're eating good food. Make sure you're drinking water. And know that I'm in your corner. I'm cheering you out. I'm cheering you on across the ether, across everywhere from Texarkana, Texas. So I encourage you all to stay positive and to be in community with one another. And let's go and do. Always joke my life. Let's go do wild and crazy things, because wild and crazy things are the only way you can get wild and crazy. And you know what's wild and crazy? Accomplishing your goals. So you got to do things you've never done to get things you've never had. So let's do those things this year. Do them healthily. Do them ethically. And let's make 2026 a year that we'll always remember. It's the beginning of a significant change in your life, or it's the year that you accomplish the things that you wanted to do. Let's make it significant.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Workbench. You can reach us on social platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Check out beyondtheworkbench.com and listen to more episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.